Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Josh Bobko from First Care Provider.
Yeah, I'm Rob Wylie.
We're here to talk to you today about Stop the Bleed and tell you how First Care Provider fits into the Stop the Bleed program.
It's a simple program. Just follow along with what we tell you. Get your tourniquets out, hang on to them while you're doing it. Practice along with us as we show you things, and you'll have it in no time.
We already commend you for making the decision to come and take a look and educate yourselves. And I'll tell you a little bit about our foundation. You know, we started this several years ago because we were training our first responders and realized, you know what, we need to get a message for everybody. So we started working hard for folks like you, because there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to do all the same things that your first responders do when it comes to some emergency situations. I don't know about you, Rob, but for me, it took a little while, and I remember, I think our partner Bill might have said something about finding your why. Mm-hmm. So, you know, my why is obviously my family and my friends and loved ones, and the idea of them having to be dependent on somebody else in the time of an emergency really struck a chord with me. And that's why we wanted to make sure that nobody else is in that situation without having the tools to get through it.
Yeah, that's part of my why. Aside from my family, it's also you see so many people that when you get to their house, they're just panic-stricken, and you know that they've been waiting for what they feel like is an eternity for you to get there, when there's some things that with a little bit of training, a little bit of practice, they could have addressed right away and been empowered to help their loved one, to help themselves, instead of just sitting there hoping somebody gets there in time.
Now we're going to go on to the slides slowly, but we'll just want to give you a little bit of background about where this program came from and why it's important. There's a lot of people, a lot of agencies that are working really hard right now to figure out, what do we do about this violence that we have in our society, and how do we improve the outcomes for all of our communities and loved ones to ever have, you know, to be by themselves and have to be in an emergency situation? What is the best way that we can enable you, the viewer, and our public to be part of the solution? So we've got some symbols on the back of the screen, DHS, FEMA, the Committee for Tactical Emergency Casualty Care, the Hartford Consensus, groups of smart people working full-time to improve the outcomes of these terrible events.
And we've taken all the work of those groups, some of which we work with very closely, and we've used all of that information to develop this curriculum to help you help yourself and to help your loved ones.
So what is Stop the Bleed?
Stop the Bleed's an initiative that was started back during the Obama administration that recognized the fact that with all these traumatic events that were happening, active violence, active shooters, and then natural events, that people were dying of things that could be easily corrected with a little bit of education. And the primary thing that was identified was bleeding to death. How many people bled to death, and with what a simple intervention could solve that problem.
What intervention?
The intervention mostly we talk about is tourniquets.
Yeah.
Tourniquets.
Well, and you know, when we talk about Stop the Bleed and stopping the bleed, you know, we have to have one of those, something to get people basically to understand that there is something they can do. And I think the big part of the Stop the Bleed initiative, and it is an initiative.
It's an initiative.
It's not necessarily a program, but it's a call to action. It's saying it's okay, police department, fire department, city council, school board, go teach your people you can do this. Mm-hmm. And whether it is tourniquets or whether it is hemostatic dressings or packing wounds, however you hurt yourself, whether it's violence, whether it's accident, whether it's lawnmower, kitchen, you name it, this is something we know that we can prevent and that everybody can do.
And I always think about it a lot along the terms of like CPR and the AEDs used. Think how everybody's taught CPR in a lot of school systems in the country. To graduate high school, you have to be certified in CPR.
Yeah, that's great.
But you know what? CPR is for somebody else. This is for you. This is if you get hurt, if your family member gets hurt. And the leading cause of death in the United States, as you well know, is traumatic injury.
Absolutely.
It's not heart attack. It's traumatic injury. So what are we doing to fix the after effect of traumatic injury? And the most fixable thing that happens during traumatic injury is critical bleeding.
Totally. But when we get to this, since you talked about the CPR, there's the cardiac arrest chain of survival. Mm-hmm. If somebody has cardiac arrest on the street, you know, the American Heart Association has pushed hard, and we have been very successful in getting the word out to people that we need early defibrillation, we need bystander CPR, we need to turn on the 911 system. And the same is true if it's a non-cardiac emergency, if it's a traumatic injury, right? Somebody falls off their motorcycle, gets hit by a car, whatever happens, there are things that we can do, and we've just never empowered the public to do them.
Right.
And so what happens is you create this group of people that actually provide, they're not first responders, but they provide the first care that that person will get. And what they do in those few minutes makes a huge outcome difference as to who goes home and when and how quickly.
And the common factor is that no matter what happens, there's already somebody there.
Every step.
Every step of the way. From the minute the incident occurs, whether it's a car accident or a shooting or an earthquake or a hurricane or a tornado, there are people there that are able to render care while you're waiting for the traditional first responders to show up. That's care.
Controlling bleeding, opening the airway, checking the respirations, preventing exposure. Remember, this is a Stop the Bleed program. I want you to put pressure on it. I want you to put on a tourniquet. I want you to pack a wound. I want you to get them to help.
And ensure your safety.
Now, that care algorithm is if somebody's hurt. But remember, when you're in an emergency situation, we were talking about race. So you want to react to the problem. You want to activate your EMS system, your 911 system, your emergency system. You want to care for the injured. And then the final step is to evacuate.
Get out.
Get out. Get to help. Make sure that when you are in a situation that you are trying to get people to help as fast as you can. That's what saves lives.
The difference between a victim and a survivor is that a survivor does everything in their power to improve their situation.
Go to the website, download the information guides, get a card, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We're all over social media. I don't know if you know that Rob is a huge social media following, but
I don't really,
but it's important that you educate yourself, share the program, make sure you have these conversations with your kids. They can do it too, and you'll see Bianca doing some stuff in the videos behind us. And most importantly, make sure you stop the bleed, let everybody know, and help the mission.
First there,
first care.